The yellow river does not merely flow, it carves. It churns through the silt, a winding ribbon of earth and water that has watched the rise and fall of everything built upon its banks for 3 millennia. In the deep silence of the morning, the mist clings to the surface, thick and heavy, obscuring the horizon where the water meets the sky. This river is not just a path of transit. It is the lifeblood of a world defined by the weight of bronze, the precision of ritual, and the iron will of those who first dared to call themselves kings. Before the cities, before the walls, there was only the river and the relentless cycle of the seasons. But as the fog begins to thin, the shapes of a new reality emerge from the prehistory of the plains. It is 1600 BC. The air is still, yet the atmosphere shifts with the weight of an impending epoch. Out of the swirling white vapor, the first structures of the Shang Dynasty take form. The era of myth is receding, replaced by the hard, tangible reality of an empire finding its footing. The river continues its steady, rhythmic pulse. Inside the fortified walls of Anyang, the air is thick with the scent of charcoal and cooling earth. Here, the river's silt is transformed into the tools of power. Smiths gather around deep pits, their movements synchronized by years of grueling practice. They handle clay molds with the care of surgeons, lining them with precision to accept the molten metal. The furnace roars, a constant, low-frequency vibration that rattles the ground beneath their feet. When the crucible tips, liquid bronze spills forth, glowing with a fierce, blinding intensity. It flows into the intricate patterns carved into the clay, filling every groove and hollow with the weight of a new era. The metal hisses as it meets the mold, releasing plumes of acrid smoke that drift toward the temple rafters. These are not mere vessels for grain or wine. They are anchors for the spirit. Each piece weighs as much as a grown man, a testament to the sheer effort required to bridge the gap between the mortal world and the ancestors. As the metal hardens, the smiths chip away the clay to reveal the finished form, its surface etched with complex, swirling motifs. The work is finished, the vessel stands ready, and the connection to the divine is forged in fire and stone. The temple interior is a sanctuary of shadow, far removed from the clamor of the furnaces. A priest steps into the center of the room. In his hands, he holds a polished turtle shell, its surface smooth and pale. He does not speak. He waits for the silence to settle. Turning his attention to the glowing bronze rod resting in a nearby brazier, the metal pulses with a dull, red heat. With a steady hand, he presses the tip of the rod against the underside of the shell. The reaction is instantaneous. A sharp, high-pitched crack splits the heavy air, echoing against the stone walls. The priest drops the rod. He leans forward, his eyes narrowing as he studies the jagged fissure that has erupted across the bone. He traces the lines with his finger. He takes a stylus and begins to carve symbols into the shell, mirroring the shape of the crack. Each stroke is deliberate. In this dim light, the first Chinese characters are born, etched into the bone to survive long after the bronze has rusted into dust. Beyond the temple walls, the Shang King commands the plains. He steps onto the platform of his chariot, the wood groaning under his weight. 2 horses, harnessed in leather, stamp the earth, their breath rising in white plumes against the morning sun. The king grips a spear tipped with polished bronze, the metal catching the light and throwing sharp, blinding reflections across the field. He signals, and the chariot surges forward, wheels churning the dust into a thick, swirling cloud. Behind him, rows of infantry move in lockstep, their own bronze blades held high. The king does not look back. He drives toward the horizon, his presence a physical weight that demands total submission from the ranks. When he reaches the front line, he halts. He raises his spear, pointing toward the enemy, and the entire army stops in perfect unison. There is no hesitation, no dissent. He is the conduit for the spirits of his forefathers, a living bridge between the divine and the earth. Every movement he makes is echoed by the thousands. Far to the west, beyond the reach of the king's immediate command, The mountains cast long, cold shadows over the Zhou settlements. Here, the air is thin and the pace of life is measured by the seasons rather than the whims of a distant court. From the high ridges, the Zhou scouts look toward the east. They watch the smoke rising from the capital, but they do not see the glory of an empire. They see the cost. They witness the forced labor, the neglect of the harvest, and the king's growing indifference to the suffering of the people. A scout kneels on the rocky outcrop, his hand gripping a weathered staff. He watches as a messenger returns from the capital, bearing news of another ritual sacrifice. The scout turns to his companions. They speak in low tones, their eyes fixed on the horizon. They recognize the signs of a ruler who has forgotten the weight of his duty. The divine link that once bound the heavens to the earth is fraying. To the Zhou, the king is no longer a protector of the people, but a burden upon them. The silence of the mountains is replaced by a quiet, growing resolve. The era of blind obedience is ending. A new order is taking shape in the shadows. The plains of Muyei tremble under the weight of two armies. The Shang chariots form a rigid line, bronze blades glinting in the morning light. But the horizon shifts. The Zhou forces emerge from the mountain passes, not in a disorganized rabble, but in a disciplined wave. A single horn blast cuts through the tension. Then, the sky disappears. Thousands of arrows arc upward, blotting out the sun, descending in a rhythmic, lethal rain. The Shang front line buckles. Horses scream, rearing into the air as shafts pierce their leather harnesses. The chariot line, once an impenetrable wall, shatters into splintered wood and tangled bronze. The king's soldiers, caught in the deluge, drop their spears and scramble for the rear. There is no formation left to hold. The Zhou infantry surges forward, boots pounding the silt, closing the distance, before the Shang can recover their footing. They sweep through the camp, overturning the heavy bronze vessels and scattering the ritual tools. The gates of the capital, once thought unbreachable, swing wide under the pressure. By the time the sun reaches its zenith, the banners of the Shang lie trampled in the mud. The capital is taken. The era of the old kings ends with the sudden, violent collapse. The dust of the battle settled over the capital, but the silence that followed was heavy with uncertainty. The Zhou leaders walked through the abandoned halls, stepping over broken bronze and discarded weapons. They held the throne, yet they understood a fundamental truth. Conquest could seize a city, but it could not command the loyalty of the people. A council gathered in the central courtyard, their voices echoing against the cold stone walls. They debated the nature of their authority. They drafted a new decree, carving the concept of the mandate of heaven into stone. It was a radical shift in the logic of power. The king was no longer a god, but a steward. His right to rule was a contract, granted by the divine only as long as he acted with virtue. If he grew cruel or negligent, the heavens would signal their withdrawal through floods, famine, or rebellion. The mandate transformed the throne from a seat of absolute privilege into a position of profound, conditional responsibility. By 770 BC, the center could no longer hold. The feudal order splintered, and the realm dissolved into 7 kingdoms locked in a relentless struggle for dominance. The Yellow River banks became a landscape of burning fields and fortified border walls. Armies clashed in the dust, and the sound of iron on iron replaced the rhythmic beat of ritual drums. Amidst this carnage, the old ways of governance vanished. Yet, in the heart of the chaos, a different kind of power took root. Confucius walked the dusty roads between the warring states, stopping in village squares to teach the value of order, respect, and the duty of the individual to the family. He spoke to the common people, his words cutting through the noise of war. Simultaneously, in the camps of generals, Sun Tzu observed the carnage and distilled it into principles of strategy. He watched the movement of troops and the logistics of supply, writing down the logic of victory that would guide leaders for 2 millennia. The chaos of the warring states acted as a crucible. It burned away the remnants of the old feudal system and forged a new philosophy. By the time the dust settled, the Chinese soul had been defined by these thinkers. their ideas etched into the collective consciousness as deeply as any law. By 256 BC, the Zhou dynasty had faded into a mere shadow. The state of Qin, cold, precise, and efficient, swept across the plains with relentless momentum. The last king stepped down, and the era of warring states concluded in the rise of the first emperor. The old kingdoms were gone, yet their legacy remained etched into the very foundation of the land. From the oracle bones that first captured human thought, to the mandate of heaven that dictated the rise and fall of every subsequent dynasty, these ancient architects built a civilization that would endure for thousands of years. The bronze vessels, once used to bridge the gap between the living and the ancestors, now rested in the earth, silent witnesses to the passage of time. The script carved into shell and bone evolved, carrying the weight of history into the future. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows over the winding ribbon of the Yellow River, the echoes of those ancient bronze drums still resonate. The silt of the river continues to flow, carrying the memory of the first kings, the first scholars, and the first laws. What was built in the fog of prehistory became the bedrock of a world that would never be the same. The empire stands, defined not just by its walls or its borders, but by the spirit forged in the crucible of its earliest days. The legacy is complete, an eternal testament to those who first dared to organize the chaos of the world.